this edition of Leading in Uncertainty, a CEO's Perspective, it's amazing to have with us Sabina Rizvi, Chief Operating Officer of Yum Digital and Technology at Yum Brands. Now, Yum Brands has over 50,000 restaurants in more than 150 countries, primarily operating the company restaurant brands, KFC, Pizza Hut, Taco Bell, and their latest acquisition, the Habit Burger Grill. Worldwide, the Yum brand opens over 9 new restaurants per day on average, making it a leader in the fast food restaurant industry. Sabina and I have known each other for about 6 years now, since our time in Bangkok, while we were based in Bangkok, and our families have known each other ever since that. Sabina, awesome to see you again. Awesome to have you on this interview.
It was great to see you again too, Arvind, and so thank you so much for having me.
Lovely. So Sabina, what's lockdown look like? You're based out of Dallas, America. What does lockdown look like in Dallas, America?
Yeah, well, before I just get to, Dallas and Texas, I just want to first start by giving a huge shout out to the frontline workers, our employees across our 4 brands globally. So at Yum Brands, actually, our frontline workers are the store employees, and we have 1.5 million of them across the globe. And so in over 150 countries, we have 1.5 million people who they're not able to isolate in their homes. They're actually out there every day working on the front line, serving our customers safely. So huge shout out first to those frontline workers for Yum Brands. And now kind of coming back to your question about Texas, Texas is the second most populous state in the U.S. And, as they say, everything's bigger in Texas. And so it's a large geography. And so while we don't have the population density like other states like New York, so in Texas, really, right now, we're seeing over about 1,000 deaths from this situation, which is very different than states like New York, where at this point, actually, they're seeing over 20,000, north of 27,000 deaths in New York. So it's a little bit different here in Texas.
Right. So when I think Dallas, I think Texas, I think about cowboys, and I think about the wild, wild west, and I think about people that, just followed their own rules, did whatever they want. And that sort of goes against what we're trying to do right now, social distancing. So are people following the rules?
Well, yeah. The wild, wild west. So my son just reminded me today that wasn't it Back to the Future 3 when they went back to the wild, wild west? And, maybe in Texas, you might not need a time machine to go back to the wild, wild west. I'm sure we could drive a couple hundred kilometers and see the wild, wild west in Texas. But I will tell you that where I'm living in cities like Dallas, it's actually pretty well urbanized. And there's lots of transplants here from all over the world, like me and my family. So I'd say pretty much people are following the social distancing rules here. I rarely see anyone out there without a mask when I go out to do my weekly grocery runs. But I will say that in the last few weeks, things have looked a little different as we're seeing a little bit more activity there as Texas has really kind of started the reopening plan.
So let's switch focus now to business. How's business been for Yum?
Yeah, well, being a global company that operates in more than 150 countries, obviously this crisis has affected us around the world because this is a worldwide crisis. But, really as I think about this, there's a couple of reflections on our business that have really helped us through this crisis. First at Yum Brands, we have the benefit that even before the crisis, we have a significant off-premise business. So while our dining rooms in most cases are closed, customers have been accessing our brand through drive-through, through delivery, through carryout for actually many, many years. And in some countries, unfortunately, we're even seeing these channels closed, but in most cases, customers are actually able to access and still get our craveable food through our drive-through, our delivery, and our carryout business. So that's kind of one reflection that's helped us really get through the crisis, is having that benefit of being a good off-premise business even before the crisis started. Second, the global nature of our business combined really with our collaborative culture is really helped us get through this. So as we all know, this crisis hit first in Asia. We have a very big business in Asia. And we were really able to take those learnings in Asia and help us react faster and adopt it in the US and many, many other parts of the world. So, for example, one of the things we learned through this crisis in Asia was customers were really what was top of mind for them with safety. They were very concerned about safety. And China introduced the concept of contactless, which you probably hear everybody now, everywhere is no contact free or contactless. This was actually introduced in our China business where they started contactless delivery. And now we've been able to quickly take that and adapt that in the US and all other parts of the world. So almost everywhere around the world now, we have been able to implement contactless delivery, contactless drive-through. And we just launched actually a couple of weeks ago, contactless curbside. So we can ensure that customers can access our brand, get our foods in a very, very safe manner.
So you run a global company, 50,000 or more outlets, over 150 countries. Now, what are you doing? What are you and Yum Brands doing right now to manage during this pandemic? Anything specific to share?
Yeah, great question. I would say as we think about our business and our employees, there's really three things that our employees are looking for in this environment. It's trust, it's transparency, and it's communication. And, one thing that we've really over-indexed on is the communication. Every single Wednesday, so once a week, our CEO of the business holds a weekly call. And actually, he holds two calls, one in the morning and one in the evening. So people all around the globe in Yum can tune in at a time zone that works best for them. And every week we feature different departments. We talk about what's happening in operations, in marketing, in technology, in consumer insights. There's an opportunity to transparently ask questions. You can ask actually an anonymous question, so you don't have to have your name there if you're asking questions. So, that's been really great for all the employees around the globe. And what's been, even better is all leaders have really started to emulate this. So I have much more frequent one-on-ones with my teams. We have, more frequent team huddles, more frequent all-team meetings. We're communicating a lot more, which is building trust. And we're really transparently answering all questions. Some we don't have answers to because this is a fast-changing environment. And we're being transparent as, we don't have an answer to that today, but we'll keep evaluating as the situation unfolds. So I think that effective communication and constant communication has been a big thing that we've over-indexed on in this crisis.
So Sabina, tell me about working from home. It must be a totally different change. It's a big change. So working from home, more busier, less busier? How is it?
Yeah, great question. I would say, I think we're probably in about week 8 or 9 of the quarantine right now. And I have to say that, in the last 8 or 9 weeks, I've probably worked more than I worked in the last 8 or 9 months. So 100% busier for sure. But it's all in a good way. And I think, there's a few reasons for this. First, we're reacting to a fast-changing crisis-like environment. So in addition to the regular work that we do today, we're quickly responding to the changing customer needs, and that just makes our days busier. Second, as I mentioned earlier, we're really over-indexing on communication. So, I have much, more frequent one-on-ones, team huddles, all team meetings with the teams, and that just takes more time. And, as I reflect, one more thing that's, made us busier and is something that we necessarily don't always talk about is the juggling that we're all doing. So I have 2 teenage boys at home. So in addition to my constant grocery runs to keep my fridge stocked, because we are going through a lot of food in this time, it's, I'm balancing being a mother, being a teacher, being an executive at Yum Brands, and also being a cook. So there's a lot going on. So all that combined together has made, this last week really busy, last 8 weeks really busy, but all in a good way. And we're getting a lot of productive things done for the business.
And does that productive thing include cooking? How's the cooking been at home?
Yeah, well, Ravi, when we lived in Bangkok at the same time, you remember we went out for dinner a lot because, so there's so many great restaurants to experience in Bangkok. So you were lucky you never got to experience my culinary abilities. But the good news for my family is they are getting better. They are improving. I have to admit, we've had some massive dinner fails. So ordering KFC, Pizza Hut, and Taco Bell in this household has been pretty common over the last 8 weeks.
Very cool. Very cool. From a woman's perspective, and from your experience, what would you advise women during this crisis, and how to manage during this crisis, and leadership during this crisis?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure really if it's me being a woman or if it's my leadership styles, but there's really a few things I think women have always over-indexed on, which are even more critical in these times of crisis. So, the first is effective communication. And I'll probably mention this over and over again in this chat because it is so critical in this time. And people need this more than ever now. And I talked a lot about how Yum Brands and our teams are over indexing that. And so that's, one critical skill that I think, women have over indexed on, and it gives them a benefit during this time. I think the second is transparency. People really want to have their expectations set and be able to decisively make decisions. And women inherently have been good at that. And, the third, that I think the women, and honestly, frankly, the men on my team, they feel very comfortable being their true selves during this time. We're on video calls, as I'm sure you are, all day long. And, it's very common that, during a video call that someone might have a child on their lap, or there might be a dog barking in the background, or someone might have to take a break to take care of a crying child. And it kind of sounds a little bit strange, but even though we're physically seeing each other less, I find that the team is bonding in new ways as we're getting to know each other and our families in different ways and the different struggles that we're all facing while working from home. So, people are being able to be their true selves, which is, a trait that a lot of women have. And as you know, stronger teams deliver stronger results.
So I want to touch on that. Being your true self speaks a lot of authenticity. So now, as you say, women seem to have that in spades. Men may not. Would you recommend that some of the men leaders out there to adopt more of this true self and authenticity?
Yeah, I mean, first to say, like, being authentic is, like you said, what it's talked about earlier is bringing your true self to work and your behaviors emulating your intentions. And I'd say authentic leaders are more effective leaders. That's just a fact. And, whether you're a man or whether you're a woman, you should practice authenticity. We're getting, authentic leaders get higher workplace engagement. They get better performance. And so men or women, I think practicing authenticity is really important as a leader. And, I'm really lucky I work at a company like Yum, because in Yum, it's really just part of our culture. We talk a lot about leading with smart, heart, and courage. And that heart and courage part is what brings out the authenticity. And that's so critical, not just in these times, but in overall, in terms of being an effective leader.
Amazing. So, fun question. When I think again of Dallas, I think of the series, the hit series Dallas, and the character, especially JR Ewing. Now, a guy that lived by his own rules, did whatever he wanted, tough as nails, and sort of a dictator. Now, those kind of characteristics, do you think it'll ever work in times like now during this pandemic?
Yeah, I mean, pandemic or not, this type of behavior it does not work in this day and age. And honestly, it's the reason why I've spent 14 years at Yum, is this type of behavior was never part of our culture at Yum. At Yum, the culture has always been collaborative, recognition based, and this is what really helped us to stand out in these difficult times. So, that's in the past, and I think it's something that successful companies, this type of behavior doesn't work. But the new series that I watched when I first moved to Texas 3 years ago is Friday Night Lights. So if you haven't checked that out on Netflix, it's an interesting series of current day and age, and sports in Texas is a big thing. So it's a football series about high schoolers playing football. So if you can find that one, it's an interesting one. And it will give you a lot of insight into what it's like to live in Texas.
I'm going to do that. Sabina, switching now to a little bit of a crystal ball and what the future holds for us. So what do you think is the new norm, and what kind of trends should we be looking out for?
Yeah, we've been, we do a lot of work on evaluating insights in our company, and there's a few trends that we're really seeing around the globe now that are, affecting our company as well. The first, we're calling it the great and permanent habit shift. So, many of today's behaviors, they're going to stick around forever, and we have to be prepared to adapt to these changing customer needs. People talk about their 75-year-old mother all of a sudden using online ordering to order pizza. Someone who's never done that before. So that's not miraculously going to change. And so, there's a huge shift into digital platforms. And we're basically right now, we're training our customers to actually order through digital channels. And like I said, it's not going to miraculously change. Your 75-year-old mother who's ordering online tomorrow isn't going to pick up the phone or go to the store when this pandemic is over. And so, there is going to be a new normal, and it's really a global transition for the entire world onto delivery and digital platforms. And, when COVID ends, we really believe that future will remain. So that's kind of one trend, that we're focusing on, and we're over-indexing on having the best experience through digital channels at Yum. The second is, people really want to champion brands that are helping the community. So when there's a crisis, we can't all be on the front lines, right? If there's a fire, we can't be the firefighters. And in this case, we can't all be the medical workers. I'd love to go be a nurse or a doctor and go help on this, but we can't all do that. But, we want to champion those that are helping. So brands that are helping in really genuine and honest ways are leading. And I'm really proud to say that Yum is doing a lot of this, our 4 brands around Yum. So for example, on Mother's Day in Malaysia, Pizza Hut team members actually delivered heart pizzas to the mothers working on the front line. In the US, KFC donated food to food banks and actually provided more than 600,000 meals to people across the country. In Canada, Taco Bell workers delivered meals to shelters for women. So these are just a few examples, but there's thousands of examples around the world of our brands that are actually giving back in this time. And that's really important for us and our brands. And it makes me proud to work at a company like Yum that is, giving back to the community in this time.
I mean, look, I totally agree. I think consumers will relate to companies with a heart, companies that give back. And I'm truly amazed that you think that's going to be part of the trend of the future as well, coming out from this pandemic. And so if this is something that we all learn is a degree of kindness, a degree of decency. And I'm so happy you and Yum Brands are adopting that. It's amazing, Sabina. It's amazing. Final words of advice, final words from you, Sabina, especially to the women that may be watching.
Yeah, I mean, I would just want to end to just give a plug to all the women leaders listening to this, because a lot of the leadership qualities that are needed in times of crisis, it just happens to be in the wheelhouse of women. So again, that's probably the 10th time I've mentioned it, but people need effective communication now more than ever. And women, they do tend to be good communicators. Women are intuitive and pay attention to the emotions of ourselves and others, which brings transparency and trust, which is important in this time. Women, we look forward, we think out of the box, we look to find solutions, act decisively, and that's exactly what kind of leadership is needed during this time. So to all the women out there listening, you've got this.
Sabina, you're beautiful. You rock. Thank you so much for being here with us and giving us such insights. Thank you, Sabina. It was great having you.
It was so great to be here. Thank you so much.